أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير أما بعد والحمد لله. We are now in lesson number 19 of the Fiqh series that we've been doing here in Darul Ummah Masjid with the blessing and grace of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us honestly to have been able to consecutively carry on the lesson for 19 sessions, and alhamdulillah we intend to continue until we finish the text that we've started, the Maraq al-Sa'adat text that we've sent to felicity text that we've started inshallah. We intend to finish it, and of course it is covering the chapters of al-Shahada, al-Salah, al-Sawm, al-Zakah and Hajj, the 5 pillars of Islam. And we're more or less towards the end of the chapter of Salah now. Not too many pages left. And then of course we'll be starting the chapter of, I think, Sawm, depending on the order of the book. And then we will be inshallah moving onwards yes, of Sawm. There are still a good few pages left, up until about 20 pages or so. Today we are reading from page number 108, and the chapter is the prostration of recital, Sajdah Tilaawah, Sajdah Tilaawah, the mas'ala of doing a sujood when we recite any of the ayat of Sajdah in the Quran. And as far as this legal system is concerned, there are 14 in total. Inshallah we'll have a list of those surahs, and it is required of you or from you that whenever you recite one of these ayat in your salah, that you should prostrate. Whereas if you're outside of salah, you can prostrate immediately, which is the best, or you can prostrate a bit later. But generally, if you're in salah and you recite these ayat, any one of these ayat, then you should prostrate quickly, immediately, and the full mas'ala inshallah we'll understand as we read in. The prostration of recital. The prostration of recital is mandatory, wajib. That's the first thing. Obviously, according to a huge number of ulama, it's actually sunnah mu'akkada, and it's not wajib, and that is the madhab of Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, and Malik, and Awza'i, wal Layth, wal Shafi'i. They're all of the opinion that it's sunnah mu'akkada, whereas this legal system, the Hanafi legal system, says that it's wajib. And so therefore, it's basically of a higher degree of importance, and we can't just leave it out optionally. Let's read. The prostration of recital is mandatory wajib, but it can be delayed unless the verse is recited in the prayer, like we've just said. Any problems, you will find full explanations of these on the footnotes. Its legal cause is recitation of any of the 14 specific verses that are found in the following surahs. Al-A'raf being the first, Al-Ra'd, Al-Nahl, Al-Isra, Surah Maryam, Surah Al-Hajj. In Surah Al-Hajj there are 2 sajdat or sajdatan li tilawah, ayatan fiha sajda baytik. There are 2 ayat which is basically a debate about. The first one is agreed upon, that is sajda, and the second one towards the last end part of the surah is mukhtalaf fiha generally, but this in the Hanafi legal system is not considered to be a sajda, and there are some usul behind it. One of the underlying factors, generally we don't want to get into it, but for example Imam Shafi'i, the sajda in Surah Al-Sad, he doesn't think it's a sajda, whereas we think it is a sajda, and here we say this is not sajda. So there is ikhtilaf there because of the riwayat, and because of also the meaning of the ayah. Some of them command you directly to do sujood, others inform you that the malaika or everyone that listens to this does sujood, and the ikhtilaf is there, it's warid within the fiqh kutub, but generally there are 14. Surah Al-Hajj, Al-Furqan, Surah Al-Hajj the first one, Al-Furqan, Al-Naml, Al-Sajdah, Surah Al-Sad, Fussilat, Al-Najm, Al-Inshiqaq, and Surah Iqra, or Surah Al-Alaq. However, hearing the verse is a condition for the prostration to be mandatory, even if it were recited in a language other than Arabic if the listener understood its meaning. Point being is, you should be able to understand and hear the ayah of sajda before it becomes mandatory upon you to do sujood for that ayah. Hearing 385 will tell you, hence it is not mandatory on one who did not hear its recital, even if you are present at the place. So you're sitting down, group of friends are talking, one person's on their phone checking up their feeds, and he didn't hear it. So for him, because he never actually heard it, he was completely in a different world, it wouldn't be wajib for that person. And the meaning 1386 will tell you that is with respect to hearing a verse of prostration, if it is recited in language other than Arabic, the prostration is not mandatory unless one understood its meaning. Right? If recited in Arabic, however, one must perform the prostration whether he understood it or not, because that's the origin of the Quran itself. Main thing is you have to listen to it. That's the whole. This is the mas'ala that they're talking about, which is that you need to be able to hear it, and if you do not hear it, it's not mandatory upon you to do Sajdah Tilaawah. It can be fulfilled by an extra bowing or an extra prostration in the prayer if the verse is recited in that prayer. The normal bowing, so generally we fulfill it by an extra bowing or an extra prostration within the salah. What it means is Sajdah Tilaawah, the sajda of it can be covered by ruku' as well sometimes, or by sujood. But of course, the most known, prominent way, famous way to avoid all confusions and to confuse musallun is also a big problem. So as imams, or generally in masail of salah, we find continuously that it is better for you to avoid confusing musallis. And you will come across masail in this particular chapter as well. But generally, a normal bowing, it can be fulfilled by an extra bowing or an extra prostration in the prayer if the verse is recited in that prayer. The normal bowing, which is the normal ruku', Allahu Akbar, going to ruku', that's the part of the salah, of the prayer can also suffice. Yet, only if one intends the prostration of recital thereby. Khalas? We'll come back to that in a second. While the normal prostration of the prayer will suffice even if not accompanied by such an intention, as long as it, i.e. the normal bowing or the normal prostration, is performed immediately after its recital. Meaning, someone recites ayah of sajdah, generally we don't do this. What we normally do, the best way to do it, and even like if you sort of revise Ibn Abidin's big his big fiqh kitab, or the other sort of fiqh kitab, you find that it's better for you to make a differentiation, make a sujood, and then sort of stand up, read a few ayat, and then go to ruku'. But strictly, legally speaking, if someone was to recite Sajdah Tilaawah ayah right at the end of his tilawah, right, for example, in Surah Al-Alaq, or in Surah, say for example, Surah Al-Najm, for example, and he went to ruku', and he intended that with this ruku' I want to include the commandment of prostrating as well, then that would suffice. With the ruku', the intention is required. However, with the sujood, if say for example someone said, I will do ruku' and then just went to sujood and allowed the sujood to suffice for the Sajdah Tilaawah, that would also be okay. Now, the mas'ala comes up, does it have to be the last ayah that you recite? Fuqaha say, in the footnotes there as well, as long as you've recited, as long as it's the last ayah or within 3 ayat. So you recite that Sajdah ayah and then 1-2 ayat. Third ayah means there's too many ayat recited. So therefore, what you should do is basically you'd have to do the sujood outside and at a different time. Generally, if you recite the Sajdah Tilaawah, you should go for a prostration independently. That's the best way. However, if you want to and if you intend to, then a ruku' can suffice for it too. And also a sujood can do the same. It can be sufficient for the Sajdah of Tilaawah as well. Joining the congregation in a raka'ah in which the Imam had recited a verse of prostration and had already prostrated for it is effectively like joining him in it, i.e. the prostration. Meaning the Imam said the Sajdah Tilaawah, done sujood for it, and then he went to ruku', and you came and joined him in ruku'. Now, does that mean you have to go back and do sujood for an ayah that you never even heard? No. Whatever, if you don't hear the Sajdah Tilaawah ayah, then you basically do not have to prostrate for it. Now, supposedly you just came into the masjid. The Imam is reciting the ayah of Sajdah Tilaawah, okay? And you went to sujood, but you didn't catch the sujood. But you heard the sujood, the ayah, the ayah of the tilawah of the Sajdah ayah. What does that mean now? What do you do? Do you do a sujood first and then go into salah? What do you do? No, you join the salah, and that sujood that you heard the ayah for, you do it outside of salah at a separate time. Khalas? But the particular sentence that we're reciting or reading saying, joining the congregation in rak'ah in which the Imam had recited a verse of prostration and had already prostrated for it is effectively like joining him in it, the prostration. Otherwise, he must perform his own prostration if he heard it from the Imam. Exactly what I just said to you, that if the Imam had already recited for, he done ruku and he done the sujood for it, he stood up, recited another 3 ayat for example, and then he went to ruku, then that's fine. You still have caught that complete rak'ah, because as long as you caught the ruku, you've caught the rak'ah. However, if you heard the Imam reciting and never got a chance to do the sujood, then you should do the sujood in your own time after the salah. Because of course at that particular moment for you to join the jama'ah is more of the important activity to do. And we've covered that in the chapter of Sunnah Salahs, that when the jama'ah is standing, you go straight for the jama'ah. One prostration suffices for the recital of a verse or prostration multiple times if that verse is repeated in the same sitting. So you recite, you're memorizing Quran, you're a Hifz student, okay, and you're reciting the ayat of sujood, like fasjudu lillahi wa'budu. Now you need to do a sujood now. But you keep on reciting over and over again. As long as you're in one sitting, as in you didn't get up to make yourself a cup of tea or to go and talk to someone, one sitting, even if you recited that same Sajdah ayah 100 times, you just do one sujood for it. We'll read the footnote for this because it's quite interesting. So repeat in the same sitting. 391. One must perform a separate prostration if a different verse of prostration is recited, even if in the same sitting. If the same verse is repeated in the same sitting, then one prostration suffices, like we have said. If it is repeated in a different sitting, a separate prostration is mandatory per sitting. So you sat down, you went for a break, you came back, you recited the same ayah again, but it's a separate sitting. When you spoke, you had a break, you had something to eat, something to drink. Then now you're reciting another 100 times because you're trying to memorize it. Then these are 2 sujood. So 1 sajdah per sitting if it's the same ayah. However, if it's a different ayah and you recite all 14 in fact of the ayat of sujood, then you would do 14 separate sujood. But if it's the same one, it's only one sujood, even if it's repeated so many times. Let's read on. If it is repeated in a different sitting, a separate prostration is mandatory per sitting. Legally, a change of sitting can be actual or effective. Actual or effective. An actual change of sitting occurs by moving 3 or more steps. So have I moved my position? If you stood up and moved 3 or more steps, then you change your position. You moved from your place. If one is outside in an open area. In an open area, you're in the park, you're memorizing the Quran, summer day, mashallah, and you've moved off from this bench to the next bench, then you change your position. That's outside. While 2 steps or less is not changing sitting. An actual change also occurs by switching to a different room if one is indoors or by leaving the mosque. One room or mosque. However, even if it's less than 3 steps, but you went to a different room now. You're in a small flat, okay, you're in a cabin, and 1 step takes you to the next room, then that would be also considered to be a separate place. If you're in an open space, at least 3 steps, but if you're in an enclosed area, there are rooms, there's a masjid door, the masjid is very small. If you leave that room or leave that masjid, then you have changed your place, and now if you were to recite the same sajda ayah again, that would require another sujood. As long as you're in the same place and you recite it many times, it's fine. I'm sure you know this mas'ala already, which to sort of specifically mention. One room or mosque, however, is considered in one area whereby moving around does not affect one sitting. So now imagine you're in this masjid. It's more than 3 steps. The 3 steps was for outside. You're inside the masjid, it's more than, you could be walking around this whole hall and you're reciting, mashallah, you're reciting the ayat of sujood and you're just walking around trying to memorize. And we've done this in madrasa times, for those who done claims, that you're walking around sometimes, you're sitting down sometimes, you feel restless. And so you're in one room, even if it's a big room. As long as you're within that room, again, it's considered to be one sitting. So first of all, there are a few images. First of all, if you're outside, okay, if you recite 1 Sajdah Tilaawah ayah many times in one place, 1 Sajdah suffices for it. If you recite many ayat or different ayat, then you have to do as many sujood as you in terms of the different ayat. If it's outside, then 3 steps changes your place. However, if it's indoors, if you move or change rooms, if you move by changing rooms or by leaving the house or by leaving the masjid hall. So for example, if you now from this hall decided to go into a separate room outside there or into the Darul Ummah building, then that's changing the room. And therefore that would require a new sujood if you were to recite the same ayah over and over again.
An effective change occurs by engaging in an unrelated action between recitations like eating 3 or more bites of food, taking 3 or more sips of a drink, or speaking with 3 or more words. So now you're reciting the sujood tila ayah and you recite it 5 times. So that's one sujood, right? But then you decide to talk to your friend. You okay, as things. And that would basically refresh it. So now, if you recite another 20 more times, 30 more times, it would be another sujood. Or you decided to eat. You got hungry, you had a sandwich, you took a few bites, 3 or more, then you'd have to basically start another sajdah. Same with drink, you have your oasis with you, your Rubicon mango with you, and you wanted to have a drink of it. So then again, you would refresh by basically taking 3 or more sips. So this is, the changing of place can be actual or effective. So this is basically, in effect, a changing of position, because you've changed by effect of your eating and drinking and speaking, your position basically. Less than that does not affect one sitting, nor does engaging in remembrance of Allah, dhikr, standing up, sitting down, or just remaining silent while seated, even if it's for a long time, affect your one sujood per tilawah. So for example, you're reciting the same sajdah tilawah over and over again, and then you just all of a sudden started dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you carry on doing the same ayah again, then that would still be one sujood. Or if you just stayed silent completely, just thinking, or just sort of, revising in your mind, then that would also not require for you to go into a separate prostration. Khalas, we're just talking about one sujood. It's quite a long discussion, just one sujood. But that is the rule, inshallah. And I hope that's now become a bit more clear. If a verse of prostration is recited before the prayer, then one's prostration for it within the prayer suffices. The opposite, however, does not hold. So you recited the Sajdah Tilaawah ayah before your salah, then your salah can basically count as your Sajdah Tilaawah itself. Whereas if you were to recite a Sajdah ayah within your salah, then you should do the sujood within the salah, not afterwards. It is recommended for one to recite it silently if someone else is present and not paying attention. Okay? It is also recommended for one to stand before performing his prostration. And 394 will tell you also after. So generally you can do sujood of tilawah from sitting down. I can go Allahu Akbar from sitting and go and then sit down again. But it's preferred, it's better, more rewarding for you to stand up completely, go down completely and then stand up again afterwards. It's recommended. You don't do it, no problem whatsoever, inshallah. All the conditions of prayer are stipulated for the validity of the prostration of recital except for the opening tahrima. So basically you need to have wudu. You can't be, for a woman, she can't be on her monthly cycles. You need to basically ritually and physically pure. The place of sujood has to be pure. So all of the sort of stipulated rules and regulations of salah are also applied in sujood of tilawah, except for the opening tahrima. It is performed in the following manner. One prostrates once between 2 takbeers, both of which are sunnah. One does not raise the hands, recite tashahhud or closing salam. Just Allahu Akbar, subhanallah, 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 Allahu Akbar. If you want to add more du'as, it's up to you. But that's enough. Khalas? Yes, please.
Recording
there is on the footnote, it's all explaining very clearly that if you hear the echo, if you hear an echo of the Sajdah Tilawah, or a recording of it, then there is no sajdah for it. But if it's live broadcast, for example, you're in the masjid, mic is taking you to the other room, or you're listening to it live from your home, then that live one would require it. But if it's recorded past tense, it's basically the mas'ala is taken from, for example, they say like if it's a parrot, and the parrot learnt the Sajdah Tilawah, and he kept reading the Sajdah Tilawah, the parrot, then do you have to continuously do sujood for it? And the answer is no. So if it's an echo of it or a recording of it, then you do not need to do a Sajdah Tilawah for the recording. So that's clear, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. The prostration of gratitude, Sajdah Shukr. So Sajdah Sahwa was finished, we covered that last time, that was quite complex. Sajdah Tilawah is finished. Now Sajdah Shukr, which is the prostration of gratitude. There is a bit of a difference of opinion about Sajdah Shukr. You know, some ulama will tell you that it's better for you to actually pray 2 rakats of nafal as shukr. But then again, the whole concept of doing an individual sujood for shukr in gratitude, like some footballers do, some boxers do, some people of great talents do after winning a fight or something, Is it allowed or not? Inshallah, we'll find out. It is allowed, but let's read a bit more and let's understand how it's exactly done. There is a difference of opinion as to whether the prostration of gratitude is legislated, i.e. recommended without being disliked or disliked. Is it disliked or is fine? Is it makruh or is it mustahab? Or is mubah, basically, is it allowed? If one desires to express gratitude, he should pray 2 rakats out of gratitude to Allah, glorious and exalted. Now, this is the actual text itself, which is the Maraqi Sa'adat. But then the translator adds a bit more to it, and he basically goes to 395 and you read it and you see that he basically says, they relied upon position and that of legal verdict fatwa is that it is recommended in general, especially one receives a manifest blessing or is protected from a calamity, yet disliked specifically after the prayer, so that the ignorant people do not deem it to be mandatory wajib or sunnah. Does that make sense? So to make that differentiation, or not to make it seem as though that every single time a ni'mah comes to you, you have to do Sajdah Shukr. So whether it's immediately after salah or by you continuously doing it every single time, but generally if you wanted to express your gratitude for a big achievement, or generally, alhamdulillah, I had a baby, alhamdulillah, I passed my driving test. Instead of doing 2 rakats of nafal, you're going to just do a sujood, it's allowed, inshallah. Now this here, the next paragraph here, is basically, it's basically one of the things that ulama have tried out. So you might say to me, where is the dalil? The dalil is that they have tried it out, and it will say clearly and explicitly. It's up to you if you want to accept it or try it or not. He says here, an important note regarding a method of warding off every harm and stress. Imam al-Nasafi, who is one of the great Hanafi scholars of the past, of the early centuries, and others have stated, now this is his opinion, this is his trying, and this is his experience. Now you're going to say to me, I'm going to say to you, it's up to you. If you want to do it, try it, that's fine. You don't want to do it, that's completely fine also. But his statement is, if one recites all 14 verses of prostration in one sitting and performs a separate prostration for each verse, then Allah Most High will take care of all of his worries. I haven't tried this yet, so maybe we want to try this out one day. But that's a little paragraph there. Let's now move on quickly. The Friday prayer, the Jummah. Khalas? Sajdah Shukr, inshallah. Any questions so far on Sajdah Shukr? It's a simple concept, no problem, inshallah, whatsoever. Jummah, it's a long chapter. What's the time? Inshallah, we'll cover it.
15 minutes after it.
It's okay? Inshallah? Khalas. The Jummah prayer. The Friday prayer is an individual obligation, fardu ayn, with its conditions, namely. So the Jummah, for it to be fardu ayn, there are some conditions. It's not fardu ayn to everybody or upon everybody. It becomes fardu ayn to you or for you if you are a male. As a female, yes, you can go to Jummah, and it's good for you to go to Jummah. And in fact, in this particular day and age in the UK, where our sisters are maybe not finding so many opportunities to educate themselves, for them to attend the khutbah is something very good. And the Jummah is something very good, especially being, a weekly outing, a weekly sort of nasiha session, a weekly fresh air session, weekly sort of lunch out afterwards session. All of these things are really, really good. Because in other hadith we find the Sahaba used to say, they said that on the Friday there was a woman that used to make a very nice meal for them, a dish. And so they would wait until Friday, and after Jummah, they would not have their lunch before Jummah. After Jummah, they would go, and this woman used to get wheat and all these things. She used to make a nice dish out of it. And all of a large group of the Sahaba, they used to go to her house afterwards to have a feast or like a little meal, a treat from her after the Jummah. And it's something beautiful because we know that the Jummah is the Eid of the week, and that's mentioned in another hadith. So the Jummah is something nice, and I think especially nowadays everyone should try and come, especially in the holidays. Bring your kids along, bring your family along, your sisters, your brothers, especially when there are so many facilities, alhamdulillah, especially in the areas that we live in. So it is fardu ayn for you if you're a male, if you're a free man, not a slave, residence in a city or even in the outskirts according to the sounder position, asah, within city limits. So as long as you're within the city limits, what's the definition of a city limit or a city? As long as this particular area has its own judge, has its own sort of council, has its own thing going on basically, they have their own system there, then that would be considered to be a city. We'll come across that inshallah later on anyway. But one of the requirements or one of the conditions for it to become fardu ayn upon you, the Jummah, is that you need to be within a city. Now if you're a traveler, If you're in the desert, out in the open, is it fardu ayn for you? The answer is no. When you're traveling, Jummah becomes optional for you. You can attend it and that would suffice for your dhuhran, of course, as Jummah. However, if you couldn't and if you didn't attend the Jummah as a traveler and just recited or prayed 2 rakats of dhuhr instead, just like the normal qasr salah, that would also be fine because it's not fardu ayn or mandatory upon you when you're a musafir. Sound health, you need to have good health. Now what does that mean? Basically, you don't need to have assistance from somebody else to come to Jummah. Now if you can arrange assistance and you do want to come to Jummah, nothing's going to stop you. But it's not fardu ayn for you in that particular case when you're so unwell that you need to get someone else to aid you to go to the masjid. Safety from an oppressor, generally safety of the passage. So if you're scared that if I go to Jummah today, someone on the way might shoot me. In that particular case, safety is more important and you should stay at home. But generally, alhamdulillah, in most of the cases, you can go to the masjid in safety. And so therefore, you should. Sound eyesight. Okay? Now, sound eyesight is a requirement, but ulama have said that even if it's someone who's got weak eyesight, but they know how to get to the masjid quite easily, without too much of a difficulty, then it will still be a mandatory requirement of that person. Ability to walk. If you can't walk without the assistance of somebody else, now in that particular scenario, if you wanted to get assistance from somebody else, and like the brother does, mashallah, every single time, then that's up to you, and that's something beautiful for you, rewarding inshallah. But generally, do you have to when you can't walk? The answer is no, you don't have to if you can't walk to come to the Jummah. Instead, you would pray dhuhr. The dhuhr fard does not go away. It's the Jummah in the masjid that we're talking about. If you can't walk, if you don't have sound eyesight, if you don't have safety from an oppressor, if you don't have sound health, if you're not residing in a city, if you're not a free man, nor are you a male, in those cases, it would not be fardu ayn for you. Does that make sense, inshallah? The conditions of its validity are the following. A city or its outskirts. So generally, 402 will explain to you a bit more that the Friday prayer is valid only if performed in a town or city within city limits, as opposed to a small village or open desert. Within a city, it may be performed in multiple places. Khalas? So if you're in a city, you can have, just like we do in London or most cities out there in the world, you can have more than one jama'ahs. There is obviously like a mas'ala and a discussion within the Shafi'i madhab about, like if it's that if you're within a city or if you're within a vicinity, an area, a borough, then everyone needs to pray Jumu'ah in that masjid, in the main markazi masjid or the central masjid, the jami' masjid of that particular area. And there's actually a great deal of stress about it. In fact, I was recently when I was in Cairo, I have a close Shafi'i, I was staying with a Shafi'i friend, and I learned a lot from him. And he was telling me that after praying the Jumu'ah, because it was a local small masjid, he still repeated it as dhuhr ihtiyatan, because the mas'ala is quite strong in the madhab that if you don't go to the main masjid of that particular area, then your Jumu'ah is basically, there's a problem with that. So generally the concept of Jumu'ah is Jam', to bring people together, right? And it's the day of Jumu'ah and everyone should come along and pray together. But again, if it's in the city and in more than one places, inshallah it should be fine. If you're a musafir, it's not like we said, wajib upon you or fardu ayn upon you. The head of state or one appointed by him to lead the prayer. So these are some of the conditions. Now we're talking about when there is a head of state and when there is Wazarat al-Awqaf, like Wazarat, the Ministry of Religion. In those particular scenarios, it is basically the original situation is that they should recommend someone since they are basically governing that department. But then if a group of people come along and they want to do Jumu'ah together and they establish a masjid like we have done so here and in most places in the world, mashallah, no problem whatsoever, you can appoint an imam and he would be leading the Jumu'ah for you. But generally in the Khilafah, the Khalif would have the ultimate authority of leading the Jumu'ah unless it's someone, a wazir appointed by him. The time of dhuhr has also it must be within the time of dhuhr. You can't pray Jumu'ah at the time of Asr or before dhuhr. A sermon, khutbah that precedes it, delivered intentionally also in the time of dhuhr. If you now start giving the khutbah of Jumu'ah before dhuhr time starts, then it's not considered to be the khutbah. So the khutbah and the salah itself have to be both within the time of dhuhr. The presence of even one person to listen to the sermon. Now this is talking about the sermon, the khutbah itself. Now Imam Haskafi and Shurumbulali and others, basically they've said that at least one person. Other ulama Ibn Abidin and others, they say that at least 3 people should be there for the khutbah, for the sermon itself. But they're saying to you that at least one person needs to be there to listen to the khutbah, so you shouldn't be talking to yourself. So in a similar way, even if one person came for this lesson, we would still do the lesson, but if nobody came, I wouldn't talk to myself. The presence of even one person to listen to the sermon, that person being among those with whom the Friday prayer is valid. So if that person's Friday prayer is not even valid, then he doesn't count as a person being present legally. General permission for Muslims to join this congregation. So you can't have a Jummah, a private Jummah, VIP Jummah, Oyster card Jummah. That's not going to work. So Jummah has to be open to everybody. Does that make sense? If you have an enclosed Jummah only for VIP members, paid service, not going to work. It's not Jummah, it's invalid. A congregation of at least 3 men other than the Imam, even if they are slaves or travelers, the condition is that they remain in the prayer with the Imam until he prostrates the first ruku'. Now for the khutbah, at least one person. For the salah of Jummah itself, at least 3 people must be present. Other ulama will say to you 12. There are different numbers, depending on the madhab and how they've looked at the narrations that talk about it. And of course we know that there's a hadith that mentions that that there was only 12. Oh yes, when the trade goods came from outside, and this is mentioned in Surah Jummah, that وَإِذَا رَأَوْا تِجَارَةً أَوْ لَهْوًا انْفَضُّوا إِلَيْهَا وَتَرَكُوكَ قَائِمًا. That when trade goods, imagine, these Sahaba were so amazing, like amazing in very different ways. Like Prophet ﷺ is standing in front of them, and he's giving the khutbah of Jummah. Can you believe it? And then trade goods come from outside countries, and they all go and start like seeing what's there, and the Prophet ﷺ is just standing there, and only 12 of them remain according to one narration. And so this is where the 12 number comes, that you need to have at least 12 people to attend the Jummah. But generally we say 3 for the Salah is fine. But this is very important. When I was reading this, I was thinking, subhanAllah, sometimes we get offended when people don't listen to you, or like people don't like stay to listen to you, that's whatever. But this is the Prophet ﷺ, Khairul Bariyah, the best of all the prophets, the leader of all mankind. And he's standing there, and only some people are staying, and some are walking off. It's amazing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, reveals the ayah and sort of, condemns that action that they did. And that's, of course, not allowed generally. Anyways, a congregation of at least 3 men, other than the Imam, even if they are slaves or travelers. The condition is that they remain. Now, if 3 people start the prayer, and before the Imam goes to ruku', one of them walks off, then the Jama'ah is not complete. As long as you've done 1 ruku', and then someone walks off, then it's okay, because you're into it basically. The ruku' counts you in. Khalas? If you walk off, but at least 3 people have to be in the Jama'ah until the first ruku' for it to be counted as Jummah. Okay, if they leave him alone after he made prostration, he is to complete the 2 rakahs of the Friday prayer on his own. Otherwise, it is rendered invalid. Okay, if it's before the ruku'. Any vicinity that has its own governor, amir, and judge, qadi, carrying out the law and establishing penal punishments, hudud, is considered a valid city, Misr, for the Friday prayer. So this is a definition that they're giving to you of what a city is. An area that has a governor and has a qadi, has a judge, has a system, has a council, and so on and so forth. The minimum obligation for a valid sermon is 1 tasbihah and 1 tahlila. So to say, subhanallah and la ilaha illallah. That's the minimum amount of the smallest size of sermon you can give. So if someone effectively will stand up and say subhanallah la ilaha illallah wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, strictly legally speaking, he might just get away with it. But of course you don't do that. It is sunnah for the one delivering it, the khatib, to perform 2 sermons with a sitting in between in a state of ritual purity while standing, not sitting for the khutbah itself. It is mandatory wajib to hasten to the Friday prayer at the first call to the prayer, leaving out any sort of distraction unrelated to preparation of the prayer. Now, this is really, really important, because sometimes when you hear the adhan of the first call, which is the sunnah, for example, a lot of us are busy doing so many things, and this happens all the time. You might be at work, you're still trying to sort of wrap up and you carry on, and then when the Imam goes into his khutbah, and he finishes his khutbah, and he goes about to go into ruku', the first ruku', that's when you run. Okay, and that's not right, because the command is very clear, إِذَا نُودِيَ لِلصَّلَاةِ مِنْ يَوْمِ الْجُمْعَةِ فَاسْعَوْا إِلَى ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. that if the call of Jummah is given out, the adhan is done, then rush and hasten to salah. Ila dhikrillah. Once the imam, then the question comes in, like obviously you're not supposed to any trading done after the adhan of Jummah. There's a mas'ala, like because فَاسْعَوْا إِلَىٰ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَذَرُوا الْبَيْعَ, and leave out any trade. So now if you were to trade something, sell something, buy something after the adhan, would that trade be counted? Some ulama will say to you no, because this is not a valid time for trading. So regardless of whether you've exchanged the goods, okay, it doesn't matter. But generally we say that inshallah the trade, the transaction will be complete because the aqd is done, but it's not good. It's a sinful activity basically to ignore the adhan. Now then another question comes in. What if you're making a transaction with a taxi driver to go to the masjid to pray the Jummah, right? After the first adhan is called. In that particular scenario, as is mentioned here, unrelated to preparation for the prayer. If it's in preparation for the prayer, you're going to the prayer, khalas, this is your sa'i itself, you're jumping into a taxi, you're giving him money so that he can take you to the masjid, then this should be inshallah okay. Khalas. And if you go out into the Middle East, then you probably understand what I'm talking about. Sometimes you're running a bit late and you need to quickly go to Haram or Azhar Mosque or whatever, and you quickly sort of need to catch a taxi. So in that situation, I think of this mas'ala. Once the imam emerges from his quarters, if there are no quarters, once he stands to ascend the pulpit, the mimbar, one may not pray or speak until after the prayer. To pray, now this is again another mas'ala. Are you allowed to pray any salahs while the imam is in the mimbar giving his khutbah? There is ikhtilaf. Adam Madhahib will tell you that you should pray the sunnah of the Jummah, or the sunnah, the 2 rakats before, or the sunnah of Jummah, even if the imam is in the mimbar. Okay, but then within the Hanafi legal system, we say that as long as the imam is giving the khutbah already and it's wajib for you to listen, khalas, there is a contradiction between sunnah and wajib. In that particular scenario, we put forth which one? The wajib, and give it precedence, and we stay silent, and we do not pray the sunnah at that particular time, we pray it afterwards. Does that make sense? If someone is praying it, we can't stop them. In fact, there are strong narrations to say that you should, because one of the hadith has narrated that someone came in to Jummah, and the Prophet ﷺ said to him, why do you sit down? Have you prayed your 2 rakats? Or have you prayed your sunnah? And he said, no. He said, well, stand up and pray. So now this is one of the strongest evidences you can get. So, but generally, based on other evidences and the largest scale of evidences, we say that if you do come into the masjid, you should, and the khutbah is going on, then you should, what should you do? You should basically listen. Okay? One may not pray or speak until after the prayer. It is disliked to eat, drink, fiddle around, or to turn to and fro during the sermon, like a lot of people do. A lot of us speak. Now, one might be thinking, well, I'm sending a text, I'm not talking to anybody. I'm sending a WhatsApp, I'm updating my Facebook status. It's all counted, it's still fiddling, right? It's still distracting you from the khutbah. So now it's not particularly the concept of what are you doing, it's what the effect of that particular action is to your Jummah, right? So it's distracting you from listening to the khutbah, and it's very important for you to listen to that. It is also disliked to leave the city after the first call to prayer adhan without having prayed the Friday prayer. So you've heard the adhan, now you want to leave, unless you're going to miss your bus and you can't get a replacement, or your train and you can't get a later train, or your car and your friends are going to leave without you and they have to leave that at that particular time for any reason, whatever the reason may be. If it's a very rushed scenario, you should try and pray your Jummah as long as you've heard the adhan being called out. Because إِذَا نُودِيَ لِلصَّلَاةِ, when the salah has been called out for Jummah, you should rush to prayer. The command is very clear and direct in Surah Al-Jummah, in Juz 28. The Friday prayer takes place of Zuhr prayer, even for one excused from attending, like the traveler or the ill person. So basically, effectively, what we're saying is, we said before that if you're a traveler, you don't have to go to the Jummah. But if you do go to Jummah, do you still have to pray Dhuhr? No. If you're unwell, you don't have to go to Jummah. But if you do go to Jummah, do you have to still pray your Salah otherwise? No. The Jummah suffices. If one joins the congregation of the Friday prayer in tashahhud, i.e. in the final sitting, or even in the prostration of forgetfulness, he completes it as the Friday prayer. So as long as you caught the 2 raka'ah, the tashahhud of it, or even the sajdah to sahu or sajdah to sahu of it, then basically you've caught it. You've caught the fadl of it. You might have missed out on the the full reward of it, but the fact that you've actually caught the last tashahhud makes you attached to the prayer. And so now when you come to stand up and you pray and you complete, and this happens, you might get confused. I just caught the tashahhud of the imam. Do I pray now 4 rakats or 2 rakats? It's saying to you that you pray as 2 rakats because you've caught the imam in that salah. So 2 rakats is what he's praying, and you complete it as 2 rakats, inshallah. The next chapter is Eid prayers. We'll leave it at that, inshallah. There are a lot of footnotes which are very beneficial and important. If you do have the book, please read them. Yes.
If someone is working during the Friday prayer, is he going to be accountable for not attending the Jummah?
So it's fardu ayn unless you have a proper excuse, and those excuses are mentioned here as well, or the conditions are mentioned, and therefore through that we understand what basically would be an excuse. If it's just work, unfortunately that wouldn't be an excuse. You'd have to arrange a time with your employer, and in fact I know a lot of brothers that before they get into work, one of the main things they look out for is, are you going to give me an hour off on Friday at that time? I've heard this, so it's really, really important. And even at school, even in college, school kids, they have proper petitions, and they fight with their principals who say we need a prayer space for our Jummah. And so Jummah is really important. You should try to make an arrangement for it. Speak to your employer, especially in the West, where people actually do have rights are actually exercised to a certain extent, to a large extent, and you can actually ask for that, and it should be provided to you. What's sad is sometimes you find within Muslim employment places, they're more strict about restaurants and garages. They have no consideration for the guy's Jummah or his Salah. I've seen it's very sad. It's very sad. Sometimes I went to a place once and I was getting something done, and I said to him, why are you wearing sandals? It's really cold. Why are you wearing sandals? He's out in the open. Why are you wearing sandals? He said, well, I done wudu. I was about to go to dhuhr, and then the workload became so much I couldn't do anything. That's subhanAllah. And he couldn't even change his shoes. Back to his shoes. So as an employer, as a manager, as a supervisor, as someone, even as a normal employee, take these things into consideration and take it with a lot of importance so that you can achieve and make sure you don't miss out the fard ayn or the fard of Jummah. Any other questions?
In terms of the adhan, so obviously in this country we don't hear this many.
Yeah.
So some masjid does 2 Jamaat.
Yeah.
So do you need to catch the first one, or it's allowed to take?
So originally the whole mas'ala of having multiple Jamaats for Jummah it was like whoa, what are you talking about? When this mas'ala came up in the West, because originally in Muslim countries this problem wasn't there. You have open space or you arrange space for a massive Jama'ah, and that's why we find that other fuqaha are debating with you to say that you shouldn't even pray in a local masjid. You should go to the main masjid and everyone attend in one place. So the space would have been arranged. Now we're talking about small masjids. Okay, we said small masjids, fine, because city limits and necessity. Now we're talking about having more than one Jumu'ah, and the Jumu'ah is supposed to be in one place and at the same time. Now we're saying different places and at different times too. So it was a second step down. The mas'ala was a bit of a strange one at the beginning, but then when the darura and the necessity came up, where basically you can't actually pray on the streets, you can't pray on the pavement, there is no solution to it. You either miss it or you catch the first Jama'ah. And that's physically it's impossible in most cases within the towns and cities that we live in the West. And so therefore the second Jum'ah was allowed. You can do the second Jum'ah, it's not a problem. It will be counted as Jum'ah. But then for your sake, as a musalli, if you have an option, either I can catch the first or the second, go for the first one. If you can. Khalas, go for the first one, if you can. Even though the second one is still fine, but the first one, inshallah. And also you find generally the first Jum'ah is more filled. There is a bigger gathering, bigger Jama'ah. And Salatul Jama'ah, the bigger the gathering, the better it is, inshallah. So these are good things. So try to catch the first one. If you can't, it's not a problem, inshallah. Okay?
Yeah, one question. I think we covered it last time, but if you miss the congregation and then you come to the masjid and you want to do a smaller congregation, can you do it in the same place? Or how do you do it?
Yeah. I think it's fine, inshallah, you can do it. As long as there isn't more than one jama'ah at the same time, it should be one jama'ah. So, especially in quite in masjids that have big halls, it's really important to look out and see if there's another jama'ah going on. You should join that jama'ah if there is. Otherwise, you can make your own jama'ah. You shouldn't cause any inconvenience. Okay, you shouldn't start doing really loud recitation or really loud iqamah. In fact, you can suffice without iqamah. Okay, you can suffice if it's in the masjid where the jama'ah has already been done, the iqamah has already been done, the adhan's already been done, the jama'ah's already finished. In that particular scenario, you can suffice without iqamah too, so as to minimize or reduce the amount of distraction, and especially when there's other people that are doing other salahs. So it's fine. Question? Oh, fine. Khalas, that's fine. Inshallah, we'll cover the Eid prayer. We've got a lot more interesting topics coming up. We've got, so for example, this is like Salatul Khusuf, like eclipse prayer. It's really nice. We never prayed Salatul Khusuf. When there's an eclipse, you should pray. There's a particular prayer for eclipse, and it's different. There's 2 rukus.
And it's longer, right?
It's longer, it's really long.
Yeah.
And the hadith say that, he stood up as if he was reciting the whole of Baqarah. And then you do one ruku, and then you go to ruku and you stand up, you do more recitation, and then go to another ruku. And then you stand up, you do, so that's an interesting kind of salah. And then you have Salat Istisqa, obviously in UK. We don't need Istisqa, we need, of course, but generally we have enough rain. But in dry countries, they have Istisqa salahs, in the Bilad al-Haramain al-Sharifain, in Hijaz, they have these things. Salatul Khawf, Salatul Janazah, of course, very important. And you've got so many, and then martyrs, shuhada, the rules of them. And then we'll go into fasting, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from all of us and grant us ilm. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na ma 'allamtana. Allahumma faqihna fi ad-din. The hadith says that man yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqihu fi ad-din. Whomsoever Allah wants good from them, He gives them the knowledge of fiqh of the deen. So fiqh is a big subject. May Allah give us the knowledge of fiqh. Ameen. Subhanakallahumma ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum.